Economic event. Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
The Speaker of the National People's Assembly, Ibrahim Boughali, has conveyed the congratulations of President Abdelmadjid Tebboune to Uruguay's President-elect Yamandu Orsi. The Israeli occupying forces suspended the entry of goods and supplies into the Gaza Strip after claiming an extension of the truce as proposed by the US, but rejected by the Hamas-Palestinian movement as a violation of the ceasefire agreement. The British Premier Keir Starmer will try to revive hope for peace in Ukraine at a meeting with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky and other Western leaders. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail from Radio Algeria International. Good afternoon. First, in our news, the French President Emmanuel Macron has made soothing remarks in Portugal that were supposed to ease the crisis in Algerian-French relations, which have never reached such a level of deterioration. Just a few hours later, despite the French president's remarks, the French Interior Minister Bruno Retailleau instructed the border police to turn back the wife of the Algerian ambassador to Mali, barring her from entering French territory on the pretext that she had no money. Yet the diplomat's wife's documents were confirmed as she presented her accommodation certificate, an insurance document, and her husband's credit card. The Interior Minister, who seems to have made of Algeria his only program on his agenda, decided to play the termination of relations card with Algeria at the expense of its president. Algeria said in response that it will take all the necessary measures to respond to the situation. The Algerian Investment Promotion Agency, API, has organized a series of meetings in Spain to promote investment opportunities in Algeria, shedding light on the improvement of the business climate thanks to the reforms implemented these previous years. Masoud Shafi has more details in this report.
A delegation of the Algerian Investment Promotion Agency, led by its general manager Omar Rakesh, held several meetings with Spanish economic operators as part of the ongoing implementation of the foreign investment promotion launched by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, called Partnership for a Lasting Investment. In this context, Mr. Rakesh and his delegation held a meeting in Valencia with the President of the Chambers of Commerce and Industry of Valencia, Castellón and Alicante, where he presented the reforms that Algeria has undergone to improve the business climate. The participants described the meeting as a positive step towards the reinforcement of the economic cooperation between Algeria and Spain, paving the way for new partnerships between the companies of the two countries. Meanwhile, the general manager of the Algerian Investment Promotion Agency hosted a workshop in Barcelona on the investment ecosystem in Algeria, during which he shed light on investment potentials in Algeria, emphasizing the privileges offered by the state to foreign investors. The event brought together several heads of Spanish companies, business office managers, as well as the Consul General of Algeria in Barcelona.
Now, the Speaker of the National People's Assembly, Ibrahim Boughali, has conveyed the congratulations and greetings of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, to Uruguay's President-elect Yamandu Orsi on the occasion of his swearing-in ceremony held in the capital, Montevideo. A statement of the lower house of parliament indicated that in his message, President Tebboune wished his Uruguayan counterpart Orsi every success in the accomplishment of his new functions, while reaffirming Algeria's desire to promote cooperation with Uruguay and strengthen the historical ties between the two countries and the two friendly peoples. For his part, President Yamandu Orsi said he was very grateful for Algeria's participation in his swearing-in ceremony with a high-level delegation, stressing his willingness to continue cooperation and coordination with Algeria in various fields and in international fora. It's worth recalling that the swearing-in ceremony took place at the headquarters of the Legislative Assembly, where the President-elect took the oath in the presence of heads of state and senior officials, including the President of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, Brahim Boughali, as well as representatives of 65 states that participated in this important event. Meanwhile, the Speaker of the National People's Assembly, Brahim Boughali, discussed with senior Uruguayan officials ways and means to strengthen parliamentary cooperation, consolidate bilateral relations, and open new partnership prospects. Mr. Boughali congratulated the President-elect of Uruguay, emphasizing the depth of bilateral relations as well as the willingness of the two countries to strengthen them. He praised in this context Uruguay's constant positions in favor of the Palestinian and Sahrawi causes, highlighting on the occasion the efforts of the Algerian diplomacy in defending the rights of oppressed peoples around the world. Mr. Boughali stressed the importance of strengthening dialogue between Africa and Latin America, highlighting Algeria's efforts to establish cooperation with parliaments in the region. He emphasized the necessity of creating a parliamentary group of friendship between the two legislative bodies, welcoming Uruguay's positions in favor of the Sahrawi and Palestinian causes. He also highlighted the efforts of Algerian diplomacy in defending the rights of oppressed peoples. For her part, the President of the Uruguayan Parliament expressed her gratitude for Algeria's participation in the swearing-in ceremony of the President-elect of Uruguay, Mr. Yamando Orsi, praising the role of parliamentary diplomacy in strengthening international relations. She also affirmed the Uruguayan Parliament's willingness to cooperate with Algeria with a view to strengthening joint parliamentary action and supporting just causes at the international level. Thousands of Namibians and senior officials have attended the state funeral of the father of independence and the country's first president, Sam Nujoma, who passed away at the age of 95. Asia Bakar has more details in this report.
His coffin was carried in a gun carriage to his final resting place at Heroes Acre, a memorial of the heroes of the country's liberation struggle near the capital, Windhoek. Several African leaders and other foreign officials attended the funeral, broadcast live on state television. The Algerian Minister of War Veterans, Laider Biga, has represented the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, at the funeral of the former Namibian President, friend of Algeria, Sam Shafi Shuna Nujoma, which took place at Heroes Acre. On the sidelines of the funeral, the minister met the President of the Republic of Namibia, Mr. Nangolo Mbumba, and the Vice President and President-elect, to whom he conveyed the brotherly greetings of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune. He expressed compassion and solidarity with the brotherly Namibian people following the death of the founding father of the Namibian nation. In opening remarks at the ceremony, Namibia's president, Nangolo Mbumba, called Nujoma the most distinguished son of the soil and a giant among leaders. Born to poor farmers from the Ovambo ethnic group, Nujoma was the eldest of 10 children. His first job was as a railway sweeper in 1949, and he attended night classes that spurred his political awakening. He banded with black workers in Windhoek who resisted a government order to move to a new township in the late 1950s. Nujoma began a life in exile in 1960. The same year, he was elected to head SWAPO, which launched an armed struggle 6 years after South Africa refused a UN order to give up its mandate over the former German colony. After independence, Nujoma became president in 1990 and led the country until 2005. He gave up the reins of SWAPO 2 years after standing down from the presidency. Over his 3 terms, Nujoma presided over a period of relative economic prosperity and political stability. His policy on AIDS earned some international praise. The white-bearded liberator came under fire for refusing to rehabilitate several hundred SWAPO fighters who were kept in prison in Angola and accused of being spies for South Africa. Thousands of ordinary Namibians paid their final respects all through last month as his body was transported the entire length of the sparsely populated country before lying in state on Friday. All flags across the southern African country were to fly at half-mast, while sporting events were suspended during the mourning period.
And the Polisario Front representative to Germany can or called on solidarity movements to support the Sahrawi people in their just struggle to stop the looting of the natural resources and hold accountable the companies involved in the looting operations that contribute to prolonging the Moroccan military occupation in Western Sahara and perpetuating the illegal situation in the region, especially after the Sahrawi people won their legal battle against the illegal association and trade agreements between the European Union and the Kingdom of Morocco that unjustly include the territory and territorial waters of Western Sahara. During a meeting held at the Gelona Cora Cultural Center in Berlin, Friedrich Schein, the deputy representative of the Polisario Front in Germany, Saleh Mohammed Sid al-Bashir, called on all companies involved in the plundering of the wealth of Western Sahara to respect international legality, which considers that carrying out exploration and exploitation activities in the occupied Sahrawi territories without the consent of the Sahrawi people through its sole and legitimate representative, namely the Polisario Front, is a flagrant violation of the principles and provisions of international law. Shifting now to the Middle East, where the Israeli occupying authorities said they suspended the entry of goods and supplies into the Gaza Strip after claiming an extension of the truce as proposed by the U.S., but denounced by the Palestinian Hamas movement as a violation of the ceasefire agreement. Asya Bakar reports again.
The Palestinian movement said it held the Israeli government responsible for the consequences of such a decision on the population of the Gaza Strip and for the fate of the prisoners. The Israeli move followed the last-minute proposal made by U.S. President Trump's special envoy to the Middle East on an extension of the truce during the holy fasting month of Ramadan. The Israeli decision that coincides with the expiry of the first stage of the ceasefire agreed on last January was rejected by the Hamas movement as a petty blackmail. The Palestinian government's representative here in Algiers, Youssef Hamdan, denounced the conditions of the Palestinians in Gaza and the obstacles undermining the delivery of aid.
The occupation is supposed to commit to implementing the remainder of this agreement, particularly concerning the humanitarian field. There are several violations and obstacles that have prevented the delivery of aids, equipment for moving debris, rubble, and retrieving bodies, heavy equipment, prefabricated houses, and tents. We have seen in your report and on your screen how people in the Gaza Strip spent the first day of Ramadan in water and tents. All of this is the result of the occupation's violations. The occupation is tampering with the security of the region and threatening this agreement, which was signed with parties and brokers and under the sponsorship of the U.S. It seeks only to secure its survival in this battle.
The Palestinian movement denounced the suspension of aid as a blatant violation of the ceasefire agreement and urged the mediators and the international community to force the Israeli occupying authorities to put an end to such punitive and immoral measures targeting over 2 million people in Gaza.
And at least four Palestinians were killed and 6 others wounded in attacks carried out today by the Israeli army against several areas of the enclave. This came as negotiations were held in Cairo to try and achieve progress towards a reinforcement of the truce in Gaza. In this connection, the UN Secretary General spokesman Stefan Dujarric stated that it was imperative to pull efforts to prevent a resumption of hostilities. The British Prime Minister Keir Starmer will try to revive hope for peace in Ukraine at a meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and other Western leaders 2 days after the Ukrainian leader clashed with U.S. President Donald Trump. After the heated row with President Trump, who threatened to stop support for Ukraine after accusing Zelensky of being ungrateful for U.S. aid, the Ukrainian leader flew from Washington to London to be greeted with a warm hug from Smartner. The British Premier said that an urgent round of calls to Trump, Zelensky, and French President Emmanuel Macron over the weekend had cemented the idea that a coalition of the willing in Europe would need to move quickly to come up with a peace plan to be presented to the United States. And finally, the U.S. Army has announced an upcoming deployment of nearly 3,000 additional troops to the border with Mexico, bringing the total number of soldiers stationed there to approximately 9,000 as part of the fight against illegal immigration, which was made as or set as a priority by Trump administration. Saroj Sharfi has more.
The U.S. Northern Command, NORTHCOM, specified that these troops are expected to assist border police forces in maintaining security at the southern border. Northcom Commander General Gregory Gillett said that the deployed military personnel will focus on surveillance, administrative support and logistics, including enhanced air transport, rather than engaging in migrant control or deportation. He emphasized that these deployments will enhance agility and provide additional support to address illegal migration and drug trafficking at the southern border. Let us recall that on his first day back to office, Donald Trump signed an executive order declaring a state of emergency at the U.S.-Mexico border. 2 days later, he ordered the deployment of an additional 1,500 troops. He accuses Mexico of not doing enough to curb illegal immigration and the importation of fentanyl, a powerful opioid wreaking havoc in the country.
And at least 37 people have died and dozens of others injured in a bus crash in Bolivia. The crash occurred between the city of Uyuni and Colchani in western Bolivia. One of the buses was heading to Oruro, where one of the most important carnival celebrations in Latin America is currently taking place. The crash follows an incident last month when 31 people died when a bus fell 800 meters off a mountainous road. With this last piece of news, we come to the end of this news bulletin. Time now for our weekly program, the International Event of the Week, with our colleague Asya Bakar. As for me, I'll meet you again tomorrow for a fresh edition of our news bulletin. Until then, stay tuned to Radio Algeria International. Bye-bye and sahaftarakum.
The International Event of the Week.
600 Palestinian prisoners and detainees were released this week as part of the first phase of the ceasefire agreement reached last month. The bodies of 4 Israeli hostages were handed over during the operation supervised by the International Committee of the Red Cross, ICRC. The exchange, the 7th of the like, marks the completion of the first stage of a fragile ceasefire agreement. It is seen as a step forward towards upholding the ceasefire with expectations for further releases and military withdrawals in the upcoming weeks. Despite the ceasefire, tensions persist. An Israeli official announced that the army will not withdraw from the so-called Philadelphia corridor in Gaza as provided for by the ceasefire agreement, thus potentially jeopardizing the truce. Asked on whether such a decision would complicate the prospects for a lasting ceasefire in Gaza, our political analyst from California, Hamoud Salhi, had the following.
There are serious implications for these decisions. If the Prime Minister were to move forward with this decision, he would find himself caught on one side between him and the families of the hostages who are blaming him for sacrificing the lives of their loved ones for his political self-serving agenda. At the same time, there is also a huge conflict between the military and Netanyahu, or the political leadership. The decision to not to withdraw is a political decision, and that put the Prime Minister in direct conflict with the military. It should be noted that both the military and the politicians, that is Netanyahu, share a belief that the corridor has significant strategic importance for what they call Israel's security. In that they see, but they differ on how to protect that security. For Netanyahu, he wants to remain in the corridor. This is basically for his survival, his political survival. He claims, he also calculates that if he does move out, it will be difficult for him to make a case to come back. But the military has a different view. They believe that they have the technology to monitor or establish a system to monitor the Palestinians' movement, and they will be able to enter anytime they want, and particularly when they see as a threat. What complicates Netanyahu's life in this matter is that the decision like this could lead to a return to a war, at which point the military may see itself losing as it has lost in the previous time, because the other implication is that this decision will impact the ceasefire agreement. The Palestinian resistance will view it as a clear violation of the terms of the agreement to ease humanitarian conditions. And by doing this, Netanyahu will find himself face to face with the Palestinian resistance, which has time and time again proven it can defeat his plans. So Benjamin Netanyahu is doing this for his political agenda, as he has done before. But this decision this time around, just like the other in the past, have huge implications, and probably that is why the Americans have pushed or are pushing Netanyahu to take a pause, and not for now.
Over 48,000 Palestinians have been killed since the Israeli occupying forces launched their operations on Gaza. Most of Gaza's population, estimated at 2.1 million, has been displaced several times, and almost 70% of buildings have been damaged or destroyed by the Israeli relentless bombardments that caused the collapse of healthcare, water, and sanitation systems. In this respect, the United Nations expressed concern at the humanitarian situation in Gaza, where the population faces shortages of food, fuel, medicine, and shelter. In a report issued this week, the UN Human Rights Commissioner Volker Turk accused the Israeli occupying authorities of showing unprecedented disregard for human rights in Gaza, stating that the military operations have consistently violated the international law. The UN report, which details the massive devastation in Gaza, called for investigations, though the UN Commissioner expressed doubt at the Israeli government's will to provide full accountability. Could the UN report have any impact, as all requests for access to investigate or even grant media access to Gaza have been systematically turned down by the Israeli occupying authorities? Our political analyst Hamoud Salhi has this to say.
Volker Turk brings very important